As expected, incumbent Vladimir Putin has won another presidential six-year term in the March 2018 election. But what does that mean for Russia domestically? Let's first start off by looking at the economy. Falling prices in natural resources, in addition to sanctions placed on Russia after the annexation of Crimea, have helped slow the country's growth to a crawl. The debt-to-income ratios in many regions of the Federation are either beyond parity or very close to it, leaving few key regions such as Moscow and Leningrad to support the weight of the Russian economy. In addition, hundreds of banks have been closed or nationalized over the past year, further increasing the financial responsibility of the Kremlin. Although Russia's so-called non-oil gas deficit has declined over the past couple of years and is projected to decline into 2019, Russia's assets have been quickly drying up, leaving only the ailing Russian National Wealth Fund to cover budget deficits. Without any economic restructuring, the country will have no money within 3 years. Russian businessman Boris Titov has developed a plan to stimulate the economy. By having the central bank lower interest rates, Russian investors will be encouraged to borrow funds to be reinvested into the economy, thus generating growth. Although seemingly sound in theory, incentivizing borrowing from the government would not fare well at all in Russia's culture of corruption. Additionally, the issuing of massive loans will force the central bank to print off more money, therefore leading to a higher inflation rate and the abandonment of Putin's MO of curbing inflation to grow the middle class. Russia's middle class has grown significantly under Putin's rule and has been a key aspect of his popularity. In fact, the middle class jumped from 8 million to 55 million between the years of 2000 and 2012 alone. However, Titov's plan to entrust the economy to the Russian oligarchy could very well head the country back into the economic turmoil of the 1990s. In contrast to Titov, former Minister of Finance Alexei Kudrin has also developed a method to revitalize Russia's economy. Kudrin's strategy involves diverting money from national defense spending to be invested into education and the modernization of Russian industries. However, Russia's economy has been a military-industrial complex since the days of the Soviet Union. 20% of the nation's manufacturing jobs are in defense alone, and it employs approximately 3 million people. Additionally, Russian influence on the world stage has been directly linked to the strength of its military. President Putin has repeatedly pointed out the fact that NATO has expanded into Russia's former sphere of influence and has placed missile systems at its borders. Defense spending in the Russian Federation has been steadily increasing since the year 2000 in efforts to modernize the armed forces, and it is highly doubtful that Putin would abandon course now. Although Kudrin believes that a diversion of investments from defense spending could open up Russia to the world, avoid brain drain, and perhaps alleviate sanctions, his opponents fear that such a plan will only weaken the country internationally and place potentially hundreds of thousands of jobs at risk. Russia's president faces a very large economic challenge this term and must carefully steer his nation from the iceberg of financial ruin. Although the roadmaps provided by Titov and Kudrin have their merits, they also carry large risks that could leave the country in a worse position than before. With Russia's economic short to mid-term future shaky at best, let's now look at the stability of Putin's regime in the upcoming presidential term. Russia's sluggish economy and pervasive corruption have sparked over 1,000 protests in the country over the past year. However, in spite of this wave of riots, the president still enjoys fairly high national approval ratings. Strong leaders have been the backbone of the Russian nation for centuries, and in an increasingly alienating global climate, many Russians will continue to look inward. More importantly, there is no unified competing political force large enough within Russia that could threaten Putin's leadership. Some Western media, however, point to Alexei Navalny as a challenge to the regime. His strategy of using social media for spreading his message to circumvent the state monopoly on traditional outlets has led The Economist to cite him as the chief threat to Vladimir Putin in the 2018 election. While a sizable amount of the population is part of Russia's tech-literate new generation, and many of the protesters are young, don't expect a full-on Maidan-style revolution anytime soon. Navalny's calls to protests have been deemed unlawful by the Russian government, and he's been subsequently arrested. Putin has been sharpening a new political tool over the past year or so. The National Guard of the Russian Federation, known commonly as Rosgvardia, is an internal military force created through presidential decree in 2016. It is an entity separate of the Russian armed forces and answers directly to the president himself. The organization has been described by critics as a Praetorian Guard of the new Russian state. While some may find that term to be a bit of a stretch, the organization has consolidated the manpowers and duties of Vevey, Sobr, and Amon, essentially becoming an umbrella paramilitary force responsible for policing, anti-terrorism, security detail, riots, and internal armed conflicts. Basically, it can be a codified personal suppression tool for Putin, preventing opposition movements from destabilizing the regime. If Rosgvardia is given more power, namely the position of Prosecutor General, they could help the president consolidate and maintain power within his own ranks, thus ensuring compliance within the structures of the oligarchy and military. Although it is yet to be seen how the National Guard will develop over the next presidential term, assigning it more power has been a smart political move. In conclusion, expect little changes from the status quo in terms of shifts in economy. It lags in growth and lacks the additional funds to invest in the future. Russia's dependency on natural resources, i.e., those controlled by oligarchs, will unlikely change due to an unwillingness to concede any power to other sectors, therefore keeping the national economic outlook tied to the world prices of oil and gas. Although the economy may teeter in staying afloat, also don't expect a force large and united enough to threaten Putin anytime soon. Not only does he still enjoy high approval ratings, but he now has an extremely powerful political tool at his disposal to quell dissent. In spite of a hazy economic future, it is almost certain that Putin's regime will continue to become increasingly authoritarian. Thanks for watching.